today I get to share with you mind-brain education science frameworks, processes, strategies, and I'm also going to share some very basic, simple things that you can do while you're teaching your students, and it could be from a distance, it could be brick and mortar, or whatever we're going to be doing, a combination of things. So let's go ahead and start out with this. I have a question for you. What did you bring me today? Well, one of the things I want to bring you is, I want to welcome you, but I also want to bring you some visuals. So everyone say a prayer to the technology fairy, because I'm going to now bring in some slides for you. So here we go. All right. And, gracias a Dios, it's working, yay. So today, mind-brain education science, culturally and linguistically responsive frameworks, processes, and strategies for you. Now, have you had days like this? And I showed it in my invitation that it seems like daily as we were trying to teach children, adults, whoever it is that you were teaching. After this pandemic closed down many of our schools, we were trying to learn so much so quickly. And people would say, oh, here, you need to implement this now. Okay, so I've got that. And then someone say, oh, but the standards, we're falling behind and we need to, okay. And I was just trying to hang on to everything. Well, you know, our brain wants to create meaning. It's always wanting to create meaning, and it's looking for patterns. So we need something where we can organize everything and say, oh, well, I think that can go in here. That can go in here. And I'm going to put it in my new organizer here. And now it makes sense. So what is the first thing I want you to do? I want you to go ahead and stand up. So everyone stand up. And why are we going to stand up? Because see this circle right here? Yeah. This circle represents a cell. And you know what? Anytime that we're active, that we have our kids doing hands-on and movement, and language is connecting to that movement, then all of this learning goes into our cells. Be it that we're moving, there's a visual response, something. And you know what? That creates something called cellular memory in our body, our mind, our soul, everything. So everyone stand up. So to organize, I don't think you're standing up yet. So come on, stand up. All right, so here we go. So there's 3 ways that we can organize everything from now into the new school year, everything that we need to do. So the first one is mind. So let's look at all of the neuropsychology research. Let's see how it can guide us to understand the emotions, everything that's going on with us. Can I label the behaviors as an adult and a child? Number 2, brain. The neurosciences. What do we know in the neurosciences that can help us in this thing called teaching and learning? And the last one over here, education science. Are there some strategies, processes that we can revisit and say, oh my gosh, that's why it works. So let's go ahead with the first one. The oldest pattern in our human brain is, well, it goes with this idea. The big question we should ask each other every day, if you're teaching children or adults, is, what did you bring me today? What did you bring me today? What do you mean, Miss Jo? And my adult students, superintendents, principals, directors, my student teachers, kiddos in the classroom where I'm working with teachers, what did you bring me today? Well, you all brought me this. Everyone who walks through our classroom door, and it can be this way, this is the classroom door, yep, but this time it's from a distance, it's through a Zoom meeting. Sometimes we're at school and there's our classroom door, but everyone who walks through our door comes in with a story. Our job as educators is to learn and appreciate every person's story. So I bet you have all sorts of stories about what's been going on in your family. All of us do. Some days we have great successes. Yay, we scored some toilet paper. Yay. Other days it's, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? I have 12 godchildren, and oh my gosh, I have baptismal godchildren and first communion godchildren, and they're calling in and they're asking about this and what about our jobs, and they have children, and then getting calls from teachers and student teachers, and and superintendents that I've served in their districts calling and let's brainstorm, let's solution seek. We all have stories right now. So the first key point about our brain is, and our mind, is that the oldest pattern for teaching and learning in our brain, story patterns. So the best thing that we can do is to take a concept, a standard, whatever it is that we're teaching, and contextualize it with a story that I understand, that is culturally responsive, that I understand this story. Wow, well, if you were doing that for me as a child, that would have helped if you had stories about farm working families. My parents are from Mexico. My father was a farm worker. If you would have talked about the fields and all that, oh, I'm in, Miss Joanne. Who'd have thunk? You were teaching me percentages. Wow. So contextualize the story. So the brain, the oldest pattern for teaching and learning, story patterns. The brain will always remember the story, and then it remembers the concept that was embedded in the story. So let's try something else. Let's go to that mind research. We're going to look at trusted models that have really stood the test of time. But isn't it interesting that some of these have come forth and said, you might want to revisit me again. I can help you during these trying times. I can help your families, their children, everyone on your staff, your superintendent, central office, everyone, your beautification staff, which are your plant managers, your custodians, everyone, your community partners. So let's revisit some of these. And for many of you, some of these might be new. So number one, Joel Barker, a classic big key point. He wrote a book called Discovering the Future, The Business of Paradigms. Why are we feeling so as teachers? Because you know what happened? We had no time to prepare for all this. And so, you know what? We entered into a new paradigm, and that means that, you know what? We all went back to zero. We could have been a 10 as classroom teachers. And then I don't know what to do with a Zoom. I don't know what to do with this Google Classroom and all the apps that they're telling me, and now bring this in and this in. And so let's celebrate. We're all at zero. What does that mean? It's just like when our phone asks for an update or a computer. It's time to reboot and transform, and that's what we can do. The next one is, I'm angry. This isn't happening. No, I'm depressed. All I want to do is sleep. Oh, you know what? This is the way that it is. So the grief cycle. And the third one, and in all honor of Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross on the grief cycle. The next one, change is external, transition is internal. Take a look at the book Transitions by Dr. William Bridges, where he says that, you know, change is external. We have no control over this, but transition is internal, how we respond to the change. So social emotional learning, trauma-based education, community building practices and models. These are the things that we need to help us move through this transition, because endings trigger beginnings and beginnings trigger endings. But in the middle, there's something called the neutral zone, where we just want time out, time to cocoon. But if you're finding yourself cleaning out drawers and closets at home and the garage or wherever it is that you're teaching, guess what? That's a sign that we're moving to beginnings, because we're trying to clear out the old so that the new can come. So now we go to the brain. 5 big guiding principles in MBE education, mind-brain education. Science. All brains are unique, but number 2, I really want you to look at this one. All brains are not equal, because context and access influence our learning. What we've learned is that a lot of our children, they don't have access to many of the materials, to the technologies. So with many of my community, that me dicen, no tengo el computer, no tengo el Zoom, I don't have these things. And people are looking down at me, no tengo dinero, and wow, they just didn't have access, but they want to learn. So that's why we all are education Avengers, because we stand for equity and we stand for providing everyone with equal access to all educational opportunities. The other thing is that the brain is a pattern-seeking device. We're all looking for patterns and associations and connections to create meaning. So what can we do? Well, here's an idea. Neuroplasticity is what we need to look at. But I'm going to put it in a very simple way. I attended a conference some years ago, a neuroscientist conference, where I sat there, and as an educator, I go to figure out how can we do this in our classrooms, because I work with schools around the United States and in the world to help them create mind-brain education science environments. Well, this neuroscientist said that neuroplasticity, well, it's very complex, but he had us stand up and he said this: I want you to visualize someone that's struggling to learn something in your classroom. And then he said, repeat after me. So let's repeat his wonderful words together. When someone is struggling to learn something, simply change the energy. And I thought, wow, so we're doing this, change the energy. So in education science, what do? We have curriculum instruction models. We have models that have served us well. So let's revisit some of these. And in one case, maybe or two, some of these are new that you can bring to your group. So everyone give me a high five. So here we go. High five. There we are. There we are. Good. So whenever someone asks you, do you differentiate instruction? Many times we get really nervous, say, well, I try, or it's overwhelming. Well, Dr. Carol Ann Tomlinson gave us the original differentiated instruction model. And she said there's 5 things we just need to differentiate: content, process, products, and here it comes, affect, and learning environment. These 2 here, boy, I can go to town with these. Affect, did you know that emotions are the gatekeeper to learning and attention and application? Wow. So let's revisit Dr. Carol Ann Tomlinson's research on differentiating instruction. But what if you have English language learners? Well, you know what? I'm going to differentiate the content by bringing in, and I'm going to get my prompt, some materials that were written for them. So I may have a history textbook, but it's all words, words, words. So I need a textbook that is, written in what's called a comprehensible input format. Do you notice words are connected to images? Get to the point. Still the same standards, still the same words, vocabulary, but written in a different format. So I'm going to differentiate the content and the process as to how I deliver the information. So the next thing is, people ask me, why don't our culturally and linguistically diverse kids understand what I'm doing? Well, I'd like to introduce you to my 4 C's model. And in the 4 C's, we start out with content, unpacking the standards. Well, yes, but only for us, so that we know what we need to do. But the first place is to understand culture, to understand their context, and how does this culture work? What are the yeses and the nos? What are the belief systems? The next thing is to understand the language context, your performance context. Where do you produce the most language? And to learn more about their language and how to make contact with you. Because for this culture, this may be a no, but over here, it works this way. And then finally, the content will just, come alive. So I hope we can get together someday to work and go deeply into the 4 C's. For those of you that have English learners, let's look at a different way of describing them. They're actually emerging bilingual students, and they come to us with their 4 B's. They are bilingual, they are biliterate, they are bicultural. They're trying to figure out and live between 2 worlds. And did you know there's an area of study in the neurosciences? They're bicognitive. So I look forward to being with you soon, someday, where we can really get into the 4 B's and look at how do you teach reading to an English language learner? Is it different? Yes. We would look at biliteracy reading. Yes, yes, yes. So the 4 B's. I have some resources for you, so it's time for gifts. So I invite you to come to my website. You can either type in Joe Gusman and put it in the Googler, or you can just go to nhie.net. And on the home page, there's a button that says additional resources. If you're looking for free materials, free information, you'll go there. When you get to the additional resources page, I want you to scroll down and you'll see something that says Spanish multilingual resources. Tap that. And then you're going to find all these websites where you will learn everything there is to know about every language on the planet, every culture, teaching materials, and other useful resources. So I hope you go and check it out. So when you're teaching, I created a directed instruction process that I call chunk and chew. Did you know the brain has something called brain cycling? It can only process auditory information and visual input for only 11 to 17 minutes, and that's it. So I'm going to chunk my lesson plan down into 11 to 17 minute chunks. I can only deliver info for 11 to 17 minute chunks. And then after a chunk, I'm going to give them time to chew and process this information. And I have a menu there. Maybe I'm going to have them journal this time, do some reflection work, maybe some partner work, cooperative learning, or whole group instruction. Chunk and chew works perfectly in the virtual classroom and also on site. And whoa, my gosh, it's time to move on. It's time to say goodbye, but we're going to learn some Zulu. We're going to now greet each other because we are education Avengers and we have a greeting, and I think we should always use this one. Did you know that in the Zulu language, the greeting is Sawabona? I see you, Sakona. I am here. And then the last part, I am what I am because of who we all are. And we are all education Avengers out there, and our purpose is to provide all students with equity and equal access to all education opportunities. And how do we go about our work? Every Avenger has to have their sign, their greeting, their way that they, Thor goes around with his hammer. We go to it with heart, we go to it with hope, and we go to it with faith that everything's going to work out if we all stay together.